Hey, good morning. Welcome back to the Sunday Serving channel. Looks like Richard almost caught me asleep there. Anyways, you come here for inspiration from the gospel. And here we are, back in New York on this lovely late May day. Instead of walking and talking, let's try sitting down here for a little bit. What's a good gospel message for today? You know, I was thinking a lot about when you think of life and you ask God for His blessing, amazing things can happen. And there's a story here in Matthew that caught my attention. I was reading through the Bible, Matthew 14. It's interesting the way it unfolds. So it starts out, we won't read this story, but Matthew 14 starts out with a story of John the Baptist being beheaded. That's a tragic story. Here's a man of God who prepared the way for Jesus. And because he was too outspoken, he was arrested by Herod. And Herod was actually scared of John the Baptist because he knew he was speaking the truth. He was calling people to repentance. He was telling them about Jesus. So he had him put in prison, but he was scared to execute him. But then Herodias, who was the wife of Herod's brother, was really mad at John because John spoke up against her immoral behavior. Anyways, Herodias' daughter is the one that asked Herod to have John the Baptist beheaded and serve his head up on a platter, and that's what happened. It's terrible if you think about it, that's pretty grim. And so it says in Matthew 14 at the end of that story that the disciples told Jesus about it. And you can imagine, Jesus here, John the Baptist had baptized Jesus. They must have been really good friends, even though they had separate ministries. And it said Jesus went away. It says, well, I'll start reading, Matthew 14. Now when Jesus heard this, he withdrew from there in a boat to a desolate place by himself. So you can imagine he was probably very saddened, shocked, disturbed, maybe even like, hey, is this my time? So he withdrew. But he didn't get to stay along very long. But when the crowds heard it, they followed him on foot from the towns. So crowds of people came to follow Jesus because he was so popular with his teachings, with his ministry of healing and freeing people. That's what attracted the crowds to Jesus. So they followed him on foot. When he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion on them and healed the sick. So there his attention turned to the people. He had compassion, he healed them. It says, now when it was evening, the disciples came to him and said, this is a desolate place, and the day is now over. Send the crowds away to go to the villages and buy food for themselves. So that's pretty common sense. The disciples were like, yeah, it's time to we're a long ways walk from the nearest town. They're hungry, send them home. But Jesus said, they need not go away. You give them something to eat. Now, I love that. Jesus very directly to his disciples, no, sorry guys, you give them something to eat. They said to him, we have only 5 loaves here and 2 fish. Now in another gospel, maybe John talks about they found a boy who had 5 barley loaves and 2 small fish. That's not very much food unless they were large loaves, but I kind of doubt it. They're probably small little rolls. And the fish in the locality there, I'm not sure if they were anchovies, but I think they were a bit bigger, like tilapia, St. Peter's fish. But still, 2 fish isn't going to go very far. And he said to them, bring them here to me. I love it, all these short commands, right? So Jesus, you go feed them. Bring them here to me. Then he ordered the crowds to sit down on the grass. And that's also amazing. Imagine 5,000 people, and Jesus orders them all to sit down on the grass. And taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looked up to heaven and said a blessing. Then he broke the loaves and gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the crowds, and they all ate and were satisfied. And they took up 12 baskets full of the broken pieces left over. Now, just in a few short sentences there, that's an amazing miracle. So note, Jesus first lifted his eyes up to God, to heaven, and he said a blessing. He blessed the food. He asked a blessing. Then he broke the bread, the loaves, and the fish, and told the disciples to distribute it. And then everybody, all 5,000, were satisfied. Didn't say how much they ate, just said they were satisfied. And then, didn't stop there. He told the disciples, or maybe they had common sense, they did it themselves, they collected up all the leftovers, good food. And it says there were 12 baskets left over. Now just imagine that. I mean, so first of all, before we do anything, before we partake in a good meal, but really before we do anything, Jesus, the Son of God, asked God for a blessing. I mean, what a lesson that is, to ask a blessing from God on the food we are about to receive. But maybe we should extend that beyond food to any endeavor, anything we try to do, to ask God for his blessing. I mean, isn't that amazing? That's not only a fishing story, an exaggerated fishing story. That's not, and 12 baskets left over, that's not a baker's dozen. That's a Jesus dozen. I mean, that's like, so what is that, 5,000? Okay, plus 2 fish and 5 loaves, and Jesus' blessing equals 5,000 satisfied people, 12 disciples, and 12 baskets left over. That's amazing. So I love that story because of that. Look what a blessing can do. Look what a miracle can happen. And it's also interesting that right after that story was when Jesus walked in water, where he sent the disciples on ahead of him. And then that's the time that he came to them across the water. And Peter said, "Isn't that Jesus?" And asked Jesus, "Can I come out to you?" Jesus said, "Come." And then Peter went out on the water, and of course he started sinking when he had doubt. He looked at the waves, he had fear, and Jesus lifted him up and said, "Oh, you of little faith, why don't you have faith in me?" So I hope those 2 stories, actually 3 stories, give you something to think about. Do we thank God enough? Do we ask for his blessing? Do we believe? Oh, you of little doubt, do not have fear, believe, and amazing things can happen. Things can multiply. Things that we take for granted can happen in our lives, and God will bless you. So have a blessed week. We'll see you next week, and take care.